So just picking up from where we left off, let's go ahead and address this seam that's running down the middle of our helmet here. So just over on our modifiers, just go Control A to apply our mirror modifier. Step into edit mode, and I'm just going to select this face down here, come to the back, hold down Control, and then select this face, so that will select the shortest path. And then also hold down Control there, and then back to the front, then to here. So I'll go H to hide, then L to select all of these linked faces, Alt H, and then Shift H, and now we've just isolated that little area. Sorry, I know that's a lot of things to press, but it's just the way I find easiest to isolate selections like that. And we'll just go on Alt Select and then Alt Shift Select all of these, the longer edges here. Go Control I to invert our selection, and then we'll do a relax operation. And you notice doing one isn't quite enough. There's still like a pretty significant lump in the center there. So we'll just open up the relax options and just bump it all the way up to 25, and then I find that that sort of does it nicely. So we can just Alt H to unhide everything, and then I'm just going to go back into face select mode. I'm just going to select half the mesh, so just like that. Delete all those faces, bring in a mirror modifier. Hopefully we don't need to do that again, and just enable clipping again. And now you notice we've got nice smooth rounded top to the helmet. Cool. So I want to continue detailing and building out the front section here now that we've done most of the heavy lifting for it. And we'll also do the visor, which is a lot of fun in my opinion. Alright, so let's start to build this out. So we're definitely going to need some more topology in here. So I think the first thing we should do is probably just add 3 loop cuts through the front here. So just 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to turn the subdiv off to make the performance a little bit better. And I'm just going to run through, select all of these loops. Oops. Down to there, up to here. And I'm just going to go space and relax. So just smooth it out a little bit there. And so I'm just going to adjust the position of these edges. So I'm just going to do an edge slide, push these up a bit, just so it's roughly sitting at the corner of where this ends up. Then using our knife tool, so just pressing K, I'm going to do a cut here and then just bring it up into the center. So just around there. And then I'm just going to slide this vertex around just using edge slide. So don't press G once, make sure I double tap G to do an edge slide. I'm going to bring this up, I'm going to slide it down up this way a bit. I'm just trying to get it to sit on the apex of the curve over here. So just double tap G, bring it back up. So somewhere around there, that sort of seems to be fitting the actual curvature of the detail that we're going for. And fortunately, like just doing edge slides works for us, since we've already like defined the shape and grade of this area. We can just use edge slides and it will put it into the correct position for us, which is handy. So then I'm going to use Control Shift and B to bevel the vertex. And that's not going to work, and that's because we don't have the proper support for this area. So let's just go ahead, we'll use our knife tool again, let's just cut a loop up to there, and then I'm just going to dissolve these 2 edges. Now when we do it, so Control Shift and B, now it'll work nicely, and I'll do 4 segments here. I think that looks good. And I'll just Alt deselect the middle there, and then just Control X to dissolve those verts. Cool. And then let's start to connect all of this up. So we're going to need a support loop that runs around this, which we will start to build out. So I'm just going to use K and start to put all this into quad-based topology. So I'm just going to cut from up here to this point, which has made 2 triangles, but if we've got triangles, it just means that we've got a chance to redirect things. So I'm just going to hide this face here, Control R, cut in a loop, Alt H to unhide, and then I'm just going to cut down between these points. Just Control X, dissolve that. And the main reason I did it in that process is just to avoid deforming the mesh. So like by hiding the face, doing the cut, and then unhiding it, and then putting all the topology back together, it means that we don't deform the shape of our model. So I just find it a more consistent way of getting things done. So once again, I'll do something similar here. So I'll go ahead, I'll hide this face. And I'm going to add a loop cut through these faces here, which I know is going to cut well into this shape, which I don't want it to do. So similarly, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm just going to dissolve those edges there to create an n-gon intentionally, because now I know that this edge loop is going to terminate between these 2 points, which is handy. We go Alt H, and then I'm just going to go to this vertex here, and then just do the knife cut. I'm only doing that just because it seems to have a more natural grade into the rest of the edge there. So I can just go ahead, I can dissolve that, and then we can resolve what's going on here. So I can use K, I can just cut that together. And then we've also got this vert on the interior here, and I see no problem with us just being able to cut that together and dissolve that, since this is pretty well just a completely flat edge, so removing topology from it isn't going to distort it because it's not curved, so it works in our favour. Then what else have we got going on here? So we can connect those together. And I kind of feel like 4 segments might have been too much because I don't really want to direct another loop up through there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to Control X, I'm just going to dissolve that, select all these verts, just space that out. I think just having the 3 segments will be enough. I think 4 is just going to be overkill for the model, in all honesty. And so now we can cut that together. And I'm just going to run a quick space operation between these points. That might sort of be pulling things a bit too much. I might just do a space between these points instead. Yeah, there we go. I think that distributes things nicely and it doesn't distort anything for us. And then just between these points I'll also go ahead and run a space operation just because it's getting a little bit tight in there, and I might relax as well just since it's a bit curved. Cool, and so we've nicely formed this support loop. I'm just going to adjust it a bit just so that it actually forms a better support loop for the circular part here. So I'm just going to select these edges, GGE, and just bring this in a bit, like so. But a bit of a problem here. So we've got, generally our face distribution is pretty even. Like, we've got some bigger faces here, some more rectangular ones here, but they're all right. This isn't great here though, this massive face. Especially for a curved surface like this, it just does not have enough area for us. But it's alright, we can very easily fix this up. So I'm just going to hide it for a second. Control R, I'm just going to add a loop through here. I'm just going to go ahead and redirect some of this topology. So I'm just going to go K, just going to cut these together. And then I can dissolve that edge there. And now we have 2 choices here. We can either cut another loop down through here and add a loop here to sort of add in the topology, and then we'd have to add some more in. I don't really think that's going to be the best solution. So instead what I'm going to do is just do Control R to do a loop through there, and then just do a knife cut, just bring that down. I think that's just a simpler resolution. So there was several ways we could have done that. Personally, I just think that's the best way we can do it. And so we can just space that out. And I might just do one more space through here, just since we did adjust some things. And I think that's pretty good. I might just do another one through there to just distribute that out a little bit more. And same as there. Cool, so I think that's pretty good. It's we've still got a nice curved shape to it. And we're kind of getting a bit of a blend of like the Halo 3 and the Halo Reach Recon, just with the smoother sort of surfaces we've got here. And it's kind of nice. It's like we're basing it on one design, but we're still kind of getting our own unique design at the same time. So, that's a bit of fun. All right. So now we need to fill this in, because this face here is ultimately going to get insetted and then extruded inwards. But before we do that, we just need to build out a little bit more topology down here. So I'm just going to add a loop cut through here. And I'm just going to delete this face to make it easier to see what we're doing. So we can fill in a face there, another face there. Let's add in one more loop. And then we've got a quad there. That's not a very ideal quad for this design, but we'll make it work in a second. I'll show you how. And I'm just going to go relax all these since we added in some more topology to that area. And I'm just going to slide this down just a touch, just so it's a little bit more in line. It's not essential, it's just kind of killing my OCD a bit. Cool. Alright, so now what I want you to do is we're going to inset this and we're going to push it back in on itself. So we're going to press I to do an inset. And notice how it's insetting on both sides of the mirror. That's not what we want. So press B and that will do an inset to the bounds. So we'll just pull this in a little bit, just about maybe that far. But there's a bit of a problem as well here. This is going to get distorted quite heavily after we've done that inset. I generally find when doing insets on curved surfaces, it's best to use the edge rail functionality. It just seems to preserve the curvature of the inset a lot more. So we'll just enable that. And then this is going to enable us to use, we'll go Alt and S, and we can just push this back in on itself. So just go, say, about that far in. And we can just start to crease up the edges. So Shift D 0.55, and have a look with the subdiv here. So this is looking all right. You probably just noticed there's two problem areas in here. And that's just because of the types of quads we've got. So like this vert isn't very well supported, and that's okay. We can very easily fix that up. So I'll just go ahead, select all these faces in here, and we'll just do another inset just to create a nice support loop for the inside there. So now we've got nice quads running along that creased edge to create nice support. Now if we look at it, we've got a nice creased edge on the inside and outside there. So fantastic. Cool. All right, so let's get on to modeling the visor. Oh, actually, hang on. I think I want to adjust one thing here. I think we might have to apply and reapply the mirror modifier. I can just barely see just a little bit of pinching around the front here. So, sorry, I know this is a bit tedious, but we're just going to go Control A to apply the mirror modifier. I'd rather just do this and have it look nice than get to the end and sort of realise it and be like, ooh, I don't like the way that looks. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm just going to select all these curves here. I don't think it's too problematic up here. I think this is all nicely curved, but I'm just going to select what this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops. And I'm just going to run one relax operation. Now that's completely deformed it. And if you remember, we set the iterations to 25 earlier. So let's just bring that back to 1. And yeah, now it's much smoother at the front. So it doesn't have a little bulbous sort of shape at the front. I don't know if anybody else could notice that. I could just see it. And I don't think it was going to make the model look very nice if we left it there. So sorry, we're just going to have to cut the model in half again and reapply a mirror modifier. Bring that to the top of the stack and enable clipping. So, sorry about that. I know we had to do that twice. I said we'd only have to do it once, but I wasn't expecting that to happen. Cool. All right. So the visor is an interesting one because we actually use a little bit of a different modeling method for it. If any of you have done my Mark 6 Gen 3 modeling series, one, well done for somehow getting through it. I need to update that. But two, if you've done the first episode, we do a rather interesting technique for the visor, and we're going to do the same thing here. Hopefully explain much better though. So I do want to just try to smooth this out because I'm not loving how angular this is, so I might just all relax between those points and then another one there. Maybe just that first one. I think that should be good enough. Sure. Alright, so let's go ahead, and I've just noticed here I just want to space these out. Space, and I'll just do the same over here. And I'll just space that. Oh, actually, no, I'm definitely not going to do that. Never mind. And so then let's go ahead. Let's Alt select this inner set of edges where the helmet and the visor meet. And what I want you to do is just go Shift and D to duplicate it, and then we'll go P and separate by selection. I'm just going to isolate this. So we'll build out the visor. We're just going to have to do a few little things here to make this work. So first of all, I just want to go ahead just up here. I just want to space these out so it's more evenly distributed. And we just start to fill in these faces. Let's go Alt N and recalculate outside. I'm just going to skip over trying to fill in this face here, so we'll just ignore that for the second. And I'm just trying to see, so we've got, what, 3 verts up here. So we've got 3 down here, so I might just go ahead and space these out just to have them line up a bit better. So I think that should work. And then we can go ahead, fill this in. Once again, just skipping this, I'll come back to it in a second. And then we've got 3 verts down here, so I'm just going to go Control Shift and B and just do it with 2 segments. Fill those in, Alt and N, recalculate the outside. And then for these faces here, I'm just going to fill in an N-gon. It's not going to be problematic for us at the time being. Shift E -1 to get rid of that crease there as well. And this is more or less going to be our visor. Okay, we'll build it out a little bit more than this, obviously, but this is going to be the crux of it. I have a little bit of a problem with the current look of the visor, though. It just, to me, it doesn't look right. It kind of feels like it's sort of bowing out forwards or something like this. So what I'm going to do, my little solution to this, you don't have to do this by any means, but it's this is just, I think it looks better. I'm just going to select these edges on the side of the helmet, the visor here, sorry. E to extrude. I'm just going to change my bounding box back here. I'm going to drag this all the way in on the X until it meets in the center. Shift and S and go cursor to selected. And then I'll just delete those verts. So now I've just roughly got the 3D cursor positioned at the back center of the visor. And what this is going to let me do is if I select the entire visor and then just change the transform pivot point back to the 3D cursor, I'm just going to go and scale this a bit. So I'm just going to scale this in. So right now, sorry, I'm just looking up here. I'm just trying to make a little bit of distance between the visor and the helmet. So I'm just scaling that in. So somewhere out there, that's just a little bit of distance. I think that's probably enough. I'm just going to select this bottom row of verts here. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to scale this all in just until the front looks a little bit more flat with itself. Like it's probably sort of dipping back in on itself now, but I think that looks nicer than what we had before. So personally, that's the way I'm going to go with it. I'd recommend scaling the visor all the same because it just kind of looks nicer to have the visor inset a little bit from the visor brim line. It just gives it a little bit more depth and looks a little bit more realistic. So let's go back to the helmet here. We'll select that same loop. So we'll Alt select that same loop. Go E to extrude. I'm just going to go Alt and S and just pull that in. I think that should encapsulate the visor at the moment, which, yep, seems to. So then let's just get this to fit around the visor here. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm just going to select the top row of verts here, like so. And these kind of already do a pretty good job of getting the visor to sit inside of it. What am I going to do? I'm just going to double tap G. I'm just going to push these back a bit just before. So it's probably easy to see if I do it in solid view. So I'm going to edge slide, push these back just before they reappear on the other side. So just go something like that. I'm just going to bring them down a bit. So just something like this. And it'll make a bit more sense why I'm doing this once we subdivide it and get all the effects going. And then I'm just going to do the same here. So I'm going to select the bottom roll vert. I'm just going to push these up just until it starts clipping with the visor. So somewhere like that. And then for the back set here, so I'm going to say from this vert to this vert at the top here, just because I can see they're not clipping or intersecting with the visor at that stage. So I'm just going to pull these forward. Now I can see that sort of clipping with the visor, which is what I want. Normally you wouldn't want clipping and whatever, but for visors and doing it like this, I find this works well. And then I'm going to do an edge slide on this vert, just pull it forward a bit more. And I might just edge slide this vert down. And just encapsulate the visor on the inside there. So I might have distorted the shape here a little bit. Yeah, so this is probably sitting in, sorry, pushing out too far, so I might just push that in a little bit further. And is this fully encapsulated there? It is, cool. Alright. So, let's go ahead, let's just check how this looks. So, I'll go back to the helmet and let's just crease up the new visor brim that we made. Oops. Select that. I'll select these and that one there. Shift D 0.55. Let's just have a look at this. I've just missed a corner there. Shift D 0.55. And I've missed a corner there as well. Cool. So I think that looks pretty decent. Bit of a mismatch on the visor, but that's kind of by design because we did scale in the bottom a bit more than the top. So I'm going to go with the fact that that's probably alright. Yeah, so now we've just got like a nice lip on the visor, and it's definitely got more of that halo reach sort of aesthetic to it. And I don't think the bottom is actually lining up because I can see the red pixels there. I don't think it's lining up properly. Mind you, it's probably because we do have the subdiv on. That's probably affecting it a bit. I'm just going to pull this up just a little bit more on the z-axis just so I ensure that it is encapsulating it. And just another thing I've noticed at the front here, so I'm going to hide the visor for a second. I'm not really happy with the curvature of the brim here. It just looks a little bit inconsistent. So what I'm going to do, and also I can kind of see it's all bunched up a little bit as well. So lo and behold, I'll do some more spacing because that fixes all my things in 3D. So I'm just going to run a space between there, and I might just test what 1 through here looks like. No, I don't like that. I might relax those ones there, and I might do a space just here. And just do one more relax between these points. Cool. So that has not by any means fixed my problem. If anything, I think that's actually made it worse, but I'll show you an easy way to fix it. We'll use a technique that we used back in the first video. And so I'm just going to set my transform orientation to normal, and then I'm going to set the pivot point to active element. And then so I'm going to select this top edge, this bottom edge, push this down a bit, and I might do the same over here. And just to reinstate this, it's important the order of operation we're selecting. So I'll select the top one first and then the bottom one, because then that uses the normal of that edge. Sorry, I should probably explain it a bit better. And just slide it down on the local y-axis. The same there. Same there. I'm just trying to get like a more natural curve going here. So it's looking a lot nicer now. And I think I should be able to just select these two edges, just do a relax operation, and it sort of filled in the difference for me. So yeah, now that looks a lot nicer. Before it was a bit wavy and warped, and I didn't really like the way it looked. So that, in my books, I think that looks a lot nicer. Cool, alright, so let's get on to the little technique that we'll use for the visor here. So, what I want you to do is duplicate the visor. And so at the moment this is called cube 2, so I'm just going to call this underscore visor. Oops, visor. I'm just going to hide that. I'm going to select the other visor, and I'm just going to isolate it so we can work on this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this one underscore shrink underscore visor, or just something to differentiate it from the other visor. And what we're going to do with this one is, first of all, let's just go ahead, apply the mirror modifier. I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to do an inset on it. If your inset's not doing anything, that's because earlier we did an inset to bounds, and at the moment the bounds are everywhere around it because they're non-manifold edges. So I'll just press B again, and now we'll have the inset. So I'm just going to do a slight inset here. And if you've closed Blender since last time, just make sure you're doing an edge rail because it will just better conform to the curvature. And we're going to do this because we want this shrink wrap mesh to be subdivided, but we need to make sure we keep these edges sharp, otherwise when we shrink wrap it will sort of distort and ruin our mesh a bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all the outside edges, and then I'm going to select all of these edges that line up with corners here. We're going to have to do a bit of adjustment on that. So just select these. Probably should have done this when we still had the mirror modifier on, but anyway. Shift D 0.55. Oh, no, sorry, not 0.55, sorry. This one we want to do Shift D1 because we want to completely retain the original shape, right? And then I definitely should have done this before when we still had the mirror modifier on, but anyway. I'm just going to select both of those verts on either side. You can see how they're sort of pushing in on themselves. So I'm just going to select both of them, use Alt and S, and just bring it out until it sits above the mesh again. So, cool. And that, for the most part, will work fine. I know there's some artifacts and whatever on the mesh. For what we're about to do, our mesh isn't going to be dense enough to be able to pick up on those. So, it will be fine. So, I'm just going to hide the shrink visor, bring our visor back in, and I'll just isolate this. Actually, no, there's no point in isolating it. So, we don't want a subdivision surface on this, so we can just get rid of that. But we do want a shrink wrap, so add new modifier, shrink wrap, and we want the target to be set to our shrink visor, and it's just going to ensure that while we cut in the details for the visor, it's not going to distort the shape, which will be really handy. So I'm just going to hide the helmet because it's a bit distracting. Now, you'll notice because we've done some scaling and adjusted the shape of everything, our visor doesn't line up exactly with the reference image anymore, which means it might be a little bit difficult for us to cut in these details, but I'll try to show you a way that we can do it so that it still looks good and you play the part and can still use the reference partially. So there is a bit of detail that's cut into the center here, so just somewhere like this. So quite simply to do it, we're just going to use K, get our knife tool, and I'm just going to press C. Actually, no, I don't want to do a straight cut here. So I'm just going to go C, and I'm just going to cut that into there. Then I'll bring this next one up to here. Oops, it's snapping, and I don't want it to do it. Just press C, because for some reason that's enabled itself there. Cut up, and then I'm just going to cut like maybe a quarter of the way into this edge. We'll clean that up later, because that will be problematic. And we've also made a horrific end-on here, but we don't need to worry about the topology for the time being, which is a really nice sort of caveat of this method. I'm just going to select this edge here and I'm going to subdivide it twice. And we're going to do that because that's going to serve as... So these two verts here are pretty much going to tell us where this edge sits on the actual model. So I just unhid everything, so I'm just going to go ahead and hide everything but the visor again. And so for this one, what I'm going to do is, once again, just K to get the knife tool. I'm just going to cut this detail down. And this time I'll use C to do a straight cut. And that will actually help me get the angle there as well. C, bring it down. Then what I'm going to do is, I don't want to follow the guides of the reference anymore, so I'm actually just going to push this up over to this vert. And then cut down into this vert here. Then I'll use the reference image again, so I'll cut down into here. Use C, because I think that will line up nicely. I'm not going to use C on this cut because it's at a different angle. Not on this one either. And then just cut into the center. Cool. So we don't have the exact same shape as on our reference image, because obviously we adjusted the position of things. But for the most part, this will still work, and it should work just fine for us. So now what we want to do is we just want to do a little bit of topo cleanup here. I'm just actually going to enable our shrink wrap so that it's on the mesh. So it's, you know, if you just looked at this vert here, for me at least, it's getting pushed behind the faces, which is just a bit hard to look at. So I'm going to put it on the cage of our mesh. So let's just do a little bit of cleanup here. It doesn't need to be anything outrageous or perfect. I'm just going to cut two verts into the back here, sorry, and then just use the knife tool to cut in some quads there. For the bottom here, I'm actually going to advocate for having more topology, so I'm just going to space this out, just do a quick edge slide down here. And then I'll just use the knife tool and just cut in an extra edge. And do the same here. Nice. And we don't need to worry too much about the position of our topology, because the shrink wrap is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting to ensure that it retains the original visor shape. So I'll just cut between these points. I kind of need to clean this up a little bit, so let's just go ahead and cut between these points here. Control R so that I can connect this vert up as well. And I might just do an edge slide, push this. Oh, actually no, I don't want to do that because that adjusts the shape of our design. So what I might do actually, I might do an edge slide to there. So just push it right into the other edges. And then I'll double tap G and just move these out. And the reason I've done that is because now this set of edges that we pushed there, it's now retained the shape of that corner for us. So just a handy little trick we can do there. Cut another loop down into there. And then I might just go Control R, just cut a loop through the middle here. And I might just connect that up. Cool. So it's not the cleanest way of doing things by any means. I might actually just dissolve this edge because it's just kind of confusing me a little bit. And I might just cut that into that loop there, just avoid that triangle. And just with some of these edges, I might just try to straighten them up a little bit where possible. So I'm just cutting between two vert points. So I can see, so I'll tell you, this one I can see is straight because I'm getting that red square in the middle there, so I know that the knife tool is actually cutting over a pre-existing vert, so that's fine, I don't need to worry about that one. This one here is not completely straight, but just very quickly clean that one up, and I'll just merge these verts. So merge it last. Straighten that up, it's probably not too important. And I might go Control R because I can just see we've got an end gone there. And okay, I think for what we're about to do, that should be alright. Alright, so this is clean enough. I know the topology probably looks like an absolute mess, but this will be clean enough for what we're wanting to do now. And I might actually just do a space between these points here. Sorry, just even that out a bit. Cool. Alright, so let's select these faces in the center here. And let's press I to do an inset. This time we want to use B to do it to the bounds. And I'll probably do it in wireframe view to make it easier to see. So I, B, and we're just trying to make the bevel shape this is going to push into, right? So I'm just going to go into there, and I just want to see, I'm going to turn edge rail off. I think in this instance, edge rail being on is going to work to our detriment. Turning it off is going to keep the inset more even. So see how all these faces are more even here? If I turn it back on, they become a little bit more distorted. So I'm just going to turn the edge rail off for this because I know that the shrink wrap is going to be correcting all of our surface deforms anyway. So I'm happy with that. And then we've got another bit of visor detail in these faces. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all of these faces that make up our other bit of visor detail. So just remember here, we've cut our shape a little bit differently. And actually, to make it conform a little bit more to the shape of our visor, I might just select these inner three loops, just double tap G, just drag them down a little bit. I think that might just help sort of give it a little bit more of the shape of the original as well. And so, sorry, we'll go back to selecting these faces. So just those ones in there because that's the interior of the visor design. I'm going to press I again. And don't worry too much about the fact that we're getting some clipping between the inset. I'm just going to do it until we've got about the same size as on the other visor inset, so somewhere about there. And I'm not worried about this clipping here because I'm going to go ahead and dissolve these edges that have been made anyway because we don't need them. So the only tricky part is just figuring out which ones are the ones I don't need. So not that. Is it that? Yeah, actually, I might just do it and not have it clip. It might be easier to keep track of. So, alright, they're just barely touching there. Then I'll select that inner part of the inset, just Control X and dissolve that because we don't need it. Cool, alright, so now we've got our visor detail. So what we can do is we can go ahead, Control A to apply the shrink wrap. And let's give these a bit of depth. So let's select these inner faces here. And actually one thing, I'm going to go ahead and merge this vert down to the corner. And then I'll just do a quick edge slide on this vert to just even up the size of the face a bit. So just eyeballing that. So I'm just having that merge at the center, at that vert there, at that vert there, sorry, so that it is just easier to work with. I'm going to select these interior sets of faces here. And then I'm just going to use Alt and S. I'm just going to push them in a bit just to add like that little bit of beveled shape to the visor. So just something like that. Then what I'm going to do is we want to do the same thing for the outer set. So I'll select that inner set again. I'll select the surrounding faces for it. Now I'm just going to select all of these faces in here. And so notice how we haven't selected the faces that form the perimeter of this other visor detail. So I'm going to select all that. I'm going to go Alt-S again. Just push all of this in. Don't want it too far. It doesn't need to be too extreme. And so now we've got the visor detail modeled into our mesh. We're not going to use a subdivision surface on this because it will cause a whole lot of pinching and problems, and our topology is not that great for it. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to use a weighted bevel on this. So go ahead, pull in a bevel modifier. Let's just change the amount to, oops, sorry, not the amount, the segments to 4. No, I didn't want to add a keyframe. Goodness, I am pressing all the wrong buttons. Sorry. Segments to 4. And then what we want to do is we'll go ahead and we won't use creases, but we'll use bevel weights. Or is it bevel weights? Or are they? Yeah, they are bevel weights, aren't they? Mean bevel weight, yeah. So let's just go select all the hard edges of our model, like so, the exact same as we do if we were doing creases. So I'll just go through, select all of these. These ones here, that one, and that one. Cool, so they're all of our hard edges. Let's just give it a mean bevel weight of 1 for everything. I'm just going to go into object mode because you'll be able to see the results better here. And then, so I'll just turn the bevel back on, and let's change the limit method from angle to weight. So now it will just use the bevel weights that we defined. And I'm going to hold down Shift and just drag the amount down to something low. Let's get some very fine edges going. And now you notice we've got a really nice and clean surface here for our visor. Now, you might be getting some artifacts. I know in my first practice I was getting a big artifact just pointing down from here. I'll show you how to fix that if you're getting that. So let's just go ahead and I'm just going to select all the edges bar the one that's connecting to that edge there. I'm just going to go back to bounding box and global, and just make sure your vertex snapping is on. We enabled that in the first episode. I'm going to go E, G, Z, hold down Control and snap up to this vertex here. And just fill in a face. And then I'll just select those same edges again, Alt S. I'm just going to pull them out a bit just so it roughly matches the shape. And I might even just select all of these, scale Z 0, just so it's a little bit more in line. And then what you can do is you can just go ahead and also add a bevel weight to this edge. And then if you were getting a big like artifact or seam down there, that should help clean it up. Yeah, and if you're getting any other artifacts or seams through the model, just make sure in your bevel modifier, just make sure on the geometry that both the outer and inner shapes are set to sharp. If you have it set to like arc or something like that, notice how you get these artifacts poking through. So just make sure both are set to sharp. And I can still kind of see them on mine. So what we're going to do, let's go add modifier and we'll get a weighted normals. And set the weighting mode to face and area. And so then we've just got a little bit more cleanup to do, because since we're not using a subdivision surface, we need to put in more manual topology to get nice curved surfaces and rounded edges. So I'm just going to go ahead and, before I apply the mirror modifier, because I can see it's sort of coming to a pinch point in the center here, I just know we need some more topology along here. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm just going to add in 3 loop cuts. I'm just going to do that. And keep in mind, we don't have the shrinkwrap modifier anymore, so I don't want to do any substantial changes. I quite literally just want to space and relax things out, so I'm not actually going to move any topology. So I'm just going to go ahead, space, and relax that, just so this is a bit more smooth now. I'm also just going to cut a vert into the top here and just connect that end-on. It's not essential, but I'll just help clean it up a bit. And also I'm probably getting a bit more of a visible artifact. I can't really see it with the weighted normal, but we do have a bit of a nasty end-on here. So I'm just going to go Control R, and I'm just going to cut this together just to make it into quads. And I might actually just do a loop slide. I'll just leave it there. It's not too important in all honesty. And actually I might just extend the spacing down to the bottom here, just to make that a little bit more rounded, and I might actually run a relax operation on that as well. Cool, so I think that looks nicer. And now I'm going to go ahead and apply the mirror modifier, because we're kind of getting this pinch point in the middle. So I just want to select between both sides, here and here. Same at the top if you've decided to put that in. Just relax that, and now it's smoothed out the front. I still think it also needs a little bit more topology, so I'm just going to add in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I probably should have done this when I still had the mirror modifier on, but anyway, that seems to be the the crux of the story here, doesn't it? Select between these points, and I'll just do the same at the top here. Go on space and relax those. And now we've nicely smoothed out the detail there. Cool. So I think it might get a little bit wonky there, but I'm not too concerned about it. If we did want to do any additional cleanup on this, what we could do, we can probably do it manually. It probably won't affect things too much because we're not using a subdivision surface workflow here. So let's actually just grab these. I might just clean it up for the hell of it. So I'm just going to push those up on the Z, these up on the Z here. And actually, sorry, I am going to cut this in half. I'm not going to make everybody do double the work. Get a mirror modifier. Oops. Maple clipping. Yeah, it's definitely just a little bit wonky through the middle. So I might just pull these. Kind of feel like we might need to pull this part in the middle down a bit more. To just help smooth it out a bit. So I'm just eyeballing a more subtle curve shape here, because kind of like when we did the visor brim, it just looked a little bit wonky to me. So I think this probably needs to be pulled down a little bit. Same as this, probably just down just a smidge. And then just for good measure, I'm just going to go ahead and run a relax operation. I think that looks better. I'm just going to apply the mirror modifier, and I'm just going to do one more relax operation, and I can see a bit of an issue that I've caused in the middle there as well. I'll address that in a second, so just relax. And for some reason, these verts weren't overlapping. So I'm just going to select everything in the middle just in case, scale Z0, and then just by distance, and fix that up. Cool, and I'll just Alt-H to unhide everything, and I don't need the shrink visor anymore, so I can just hide that. And there you go. And just for a little bit of presentation here, I'd normally leave this to the end, but I do love doing the visors. I think they are the funnest part of these helmet modeling projects. I'm just going to go ahead, I'll slap an HDRI into the scene here. HDRI, rather like this one. I'm just going to go ahead, turn my film to transparent. And let's just make a very reflective material here. So let's just give it some sort of orange value that would be a nice gold when it's turned metallic. And let's bring the roughness down to like 0.1. And notice how we're getting lovely clean reflections. I might actually just make the roughness complete. Nice clean reflections. So we're not getting pinching, we're not getting artifacts. It's all just sort of flowing along the model as you'd expect. Just add a little bit of roughness because I think with a little bit more of a frosted look, it looks nice. But yeah, so sorry, I know this one took a while longer and we only really got the visor and a little bit more detail put into here. But personally, this is one of my favorite parts of the modeling process, and it really starts to bring it all to life as well. So in the next tutorial, we'll finish building out the bottom front of the helmet here. And we can probably extend into a little bit of the sides here as well. So we can probably look forward to getting that done and maybe this little extrusion here. So I hope you guys are happy with the way this is looking because it's very, very cool. And I'll see you all in the next one.